Hello again guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to be taking a look at the Skunk Works Lockheed F-104G. The aircraft released recently. We're not going to be carrying out a full review as there's really not a whole lot new in terms of what the product is offering versus the TF-104 previously released by Skunk Works. If you do want to watch a full review of the aircraft, I'll leave a link above, and again the products are very similar generally speaking. There are just a couple of differences, we'll touch on those during the video, but for the most part this is just going to be a flight in the aircraft. We're currently on the ground at Aviano Military Base in northern Italy, and we're going to be taking the F-104 on a blast around the Italian Alps. It's going to be a full flight, so we'll carry out the full startup process. We'll be departing out to the east, making a low-level run through the valleys of the Italian mountains. On our way home we'll bust through Mach 1, we'll make a quick zoom climb, and then we'll return back towards Aviano. You can see there is some weather in the area, so that should add a little bit of interest to our run. As always guys, I do hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. As I mentioned, we're going to be carrying out a full startup, so let's head for the cockpit of the F-104, and we'll begin running through our checklists. So welcome to the cockpit of the Skunk Works F-104G. One thing that we will note, just different to the previous version of the aircraft, at least for the time being, we do now get a rather fetching kneeboard with the aircraft. That gives us quite a bit of functionality there in terms of how we actually set the aircraft up. We can install the tip tanks and the pylon tanks. We can also load up our fuel. Same goes for the external GPU. We can choose whether or not to select that and have that connect to the aircraft, start that up from the menu. Overall much easier to use than the previous external applications that we had to use with the F-104. Similarly, we can select our PHI flight plans. We've got a load of TACAN stations there available, and we also now have a checklist included on the kneeboard. Lastly, we have a wind component chart. For today's flight though, we're not going to be using the kneeboard, instead we'll be using a paper checklist, so we can get rid of that for the time being. Running through our internal checks, the left console circuit breakers are checked in. Emergency UHF radio is selected off. UHF command radio will set to transmit. Stability control switches are on and guarded. APC cutout switch is on and guarded. Refueling switch is selected off. Fuel shutoff switch is selected on, guarded, and the clip is in place. Auxiliary trim selector is set to stick trim, and again that's guarded up. Radar control panel is off. And another nice addition to the F-104, we now have an autopilot panel with various features, although again we're not going to be looking at that today. Wing flap lever is selected up. Throttle is off, speed brake switch is in, landing gear lever is down, the red light is out, landing gear unsafe warning light is out, landing gear indication we have 3 greens, landing and taxi lights are off, anti-skid switch can go on, drag chute handle is stowed, armament control panel is set, altimeter is set, showing a QNH there of 28.70 more or less, aerodrome elevation just below 400 feet. The clock is checked. Airspeed indicator marker will set to 180 knots for the takeoff at our current weight. PHI will set to TACAN. That's just going to give us a directional gyro effectively, showing a heading there of 155, and about the same there on the compass. Standby attitude indicator is checked, same for the primary attitude indicator. Both of those will come good once we've got the engine fired up. Accelerometer has been reset. Weapon selector panel. The drop lock switch is set to safe. Canopy jettison handle is stowed. Ram air turbine handle is stowed. And the emergency nozzle closure handle also stowed. Stormlight switch is off. External fuel quantity indications. So just the tip tanks fitted to the aircraft today, and showing about 1100 pounds there in each of the tip tanks, and we've got around just under 6,000 pounds of fuel on board the aircraft. Generator switches are both on and guarded. Canopy defogger rheostat will leave off for the time being, so we'll carry out a fuel quantity and light test. Everything looking good there, and the fuel quantities rolling back to their previous positions. Liquid oxygen quantity, we're looking for at least 4 litres, we've got 10 on board the aircraft. Oxygen system is checked, we'll set the supply on. We've got normal selected and a normal flow. Faceplate heat rheostat, again we'll leave that off for now. Pressure suit valve lever can go on. TACAN control panel can stay off. IFF master switch will set to standby. SIF panel is set. DCU9 alpha panel is set. Dual timers are set. Inertial navigation, we'll leave that off for the time being. Fresh air scoop needs to go to the fully aft closed position. And we have that set. Cockpit temperature mode is set to auto. The heat rheostat will leave in the cold position. Engine duct anti-ice switch is off. Ventilated suit blower is off. Rain removal switch is off. PHI navigation control panel is checked. Lighting control panel, we'll set the exterior lights to steady. They can go to bright, and we'll get the beacon on in preparation for the start. C2G compass is checked. Rocket select switch is set. And the align control panel is checked. And we are now ready to fire up the mighty F-104. Okay, so we do have a good start running through our engine parameters. We're looking for a nozzle position of between 8.5 and 9.5 units. Showing around 9.5 units there on the gauge. On the tachometer we're looking for 67%, showing just above the red line there in terms of our RPM. EGT looks good, oil pressure is checked. Fuel flow, again above the red line there, so everything nicely within limits. For the after start checks we can start aligning the INS, so we'll first set that to standby. And we can now move that into the align position. We do have a steady green light there on the mode indicator, we're just waiting for that to start flashing green. And then the INS is ready to go to nav. Rain removal is set off. Optical sight not required. Radar, again we'll be leaving that off for the flight today. UHF is set, TACAN is off. IFF can go to normal. And we do now have the mode light flashing there on the INS, so the INS can go into the nav position. And you can see we now do have a correct indication there on the attitude indicator. Engine duct anti-ice is off, speed brakes will check. So just extending those and confirming operation with the ground crew. Once again we can stow the speed brakes. Pitot static heat is on. Flaps will initially set to the landing position. And we do have land indicated there on both the leading edge and the trailing edge flaps. We'll go back to the takeoff position. And we have takeoff indicated. Emergency nozzle closure system will check. So pulling out the handle there, we're looking for between 1 and 3 units, showing about 2.1. And again the nozzle returning to the correct position. So the INS is set, ejection seat safety pin has been removed, we'll show that once again to the ground crew. External stores safety pins have been removed, we can now lock up the canopy. And the canopy is closed and locked, the caution there on the CWP is out. Wheel chocks have been removed, once again we'll just confirm that with our ground crew. We are now ready for the taxi, and it's a nice short taxi for us, the holding point just off our right shoulder. So off the brakes, once again we do have the anti-skid switch on. So just coming up on the throttle, joining right onto the main taxiway. And as I say, we'll just make our way out towards the holding point. We'll hold short of the runway and then we'll carry out the before takeoff checks. And just checking our flight instrumentation as well as we carry out the turn. So the holding point for runway 05 just off the nose. Just progressively coming onto the brakes, holding the aircraft on the brakes. The before takeoff checks. Fuel quantities are checked, wing flaps are in the takeoff position, speed brakes are in, canopy is closed and locked, oxygen is checked, radios, IFF and TACAN are set, ejection seat safety pin is out, defogger is set, stabiliser trim we can set for the takeoff. So just adjusting the elevator trim there till we see the stabiliser light on the takeoff trim indication lights. There we have stabiliser. Anti-collision light is on. Pitot heat is on. Anti-skid is on. And off the brakes, getting ourselves lined up on runway 05. So it's all clear on final. Nothing upwind of us as well, although a little bit of weather out there towards the east by the looks of things. Anyway, we'll get ourselves lined up runway 05, we're going to light up that afterburner and then we'll be on our way. Just up through 350 knots, the flaps can come in. Just tracking out on runway heading initially. Does look like we're going to clear the weather before we start our run. And tracking out towards the river just off the nose, we'll pick that up, follow that out towards the north. Overall so far the F-104 flies very much like the TF-104 as you'd expect. Real joy to fly. No idea how accurate it is, but it's great fun in the sim. And it's really nice to have the F-104, of course, with its single cockpit. I think looks a little bit more menacing overall. Anyway, picking up the river, we're looking to track the valley that's further out towards the west, so we'll continue the turn out towards our 11 o'clock. Just about to start the run, so the afterburner can go in once again. Not going to be nearly as fun if we're not approaching Mach 1 as we come here around the corner. We'll try our best as well to keep low level, scrape the tops of those trees. A few bumps there as we come over the start of the hills. Nothing though that the F-104 can't handle. Coming up through Mach point 8, just coming around the corner. We've got the lake just off the nose, that's turning point 1. Now we're going to reverse the turn back out towards the north. We'll continue to follow the valley. You can see we've got the river just down below us, the road down there as well. We're going to follow those, continuing out towards the north. Up to around 3G there as we come through the turn. So we'll overbank the aircraft, again trying to avoid pulling too much G here. Want to build up as much speed as we can. We're going to put the aircraft into a zoom climb. So back out towards the south, getting the aircraft pointed out towards the ground. Continuing to accelerate here, just coming up through Mach 1. And we'll try not to pull too much G here as we pitch the aircraft back up, just to avoid bleeding off that airspeed unnecessarily. So up to around 4 Gs as we put the aircraft into a climb. We'll go for about 30 degrees here in the climb. Now we'll just keep the aircraft pointed up towards the sky until we bleed off the speed back to around 300 knots. See what sort of altitude we can achieve here. Back through 400, leaving those Italian mountains very quickly behind us, just coming up through the cloud layer. Really stunning scenery as ever in the sim. Up through around 35 degrees now on the pitch. And just coming up on our 300 knots, we don't really want to be getting any slower than that in the F-104. So we'll roll the aircraft inverted, off the throttle, we'll get the speed brake in there as well. And we should have the Aviano Military base somewhere off at our 2 o'clock. For the time being though, we'll track away from the field just to bleed off some energy here. Get our speed back before we make an approach onto runway 05. We can just follow the contour of the hills here, back out towards the east. And we should have enough track miles now to make our way back towards the airfield. We're only doing 300 knots, so it shouldn't be too hard to lose the airspeed. We'll take the flaps to the takeoff position. Just going to give us a little bit more margin to the stall that way. And we'll come off the speed brake now, pretty confident we've got plenty of time to get the aircraft slowed down. So as I say, just following the contours of these hills for now, just coming back below the cloud layer. And then we'll track back out towards the east, back towards Aviano. Running through our descent checks, the engine anti-ice we can leave off, altimeter is set, fuel quantity. Still got plenty of fuel on board the aircraft, we're down to about 700 pounds there in each tip tank, and we've got full fuel load there on the aircraft tanks. Oxygen is set as required. The before landing checks, the sight is caged and off, radar is off. Armament switches are off. Wing flaps are set to take off. And just coming around the corner now, heading back towards home base. Okay, so just coming on to final for runway 05. You can see there's still a little bit of weather in the area, but it's not too bad overhead the airfield. Profile's looking good, we're doing 200 knots or just below, maintaining around 90% RPM. We'll basically keep our power setting until we touch down. We want to make sure we don't go below 85%, just to make sure we keep that bleed air going over the wings. Once we touch down, we can cut the throttle, deploy the drag chute. And we want to fly a nice shallow approach profile down towards the touchdown zone. Just a touch high here at the moment, so coming slightly back on the power. Just starting to bring the nose up. Let's touch down, we'll deploy the chute. Coming onto the brakes. And we'll take the second exit on the right. Okay, so we've just cleared runway 05, running through the aft landing checks. Wing flaps can go back to takeoff. We'll get the pitot heat off. Ejection seat pin we can insert, rain removal is off. Looks like we've got a Wing 42 Boeing 247 there off on our left. Really nice aircraft for the sim. Just reviewed that recently, of course. Anyway, we're going to make our way back in towards our parking area, back towards our ground crew, so we'll taxi straight ahead for the time being. Continuing with our aft landing checks, the radar is off, speed brakes are in, trims are set. Canopy will leave closed for the time being, anti-collision light will leave on. So we'll take the next left back towards the apron. Getting the aircraft slowed down for the turn. And we'll head back towards our bay. We'll pull in parallel to the ground equipment there, and then the ground crew can reconnect the ladder to help us disembark. So I'll take the second right by the looks of things. And we'll just roll a little bit further forward here, make sure we're parallel with the ground equipment. Okay, so holding the aircraft on the brakes for the shutdown, the flaps can come up. And we have flaps indicating up. The INS can go off. Electrical equipment, we'll just run around the cockpit there, making sure everything's off. So UHF radio is off. Radar's off. Anti-skid can go off. Oxygen supply's off. IFF can go back to the off position. We'll leave the lights for the time being. And the cockpit temperature control can go back to manual. So electrical equipment is off, temperature rheostat is set. Engine's been idling now for 3 minutes. So we'll cut the fuel. And we'll get the canopy opened up. So there you go guys, I hope you enjoyed our outing in the Skunk Works Lockheed FRF-104. Another really nice effort from them, although I do take just one or two issues with the release. Firstly, the product is only currently available through SimMarket or the InSim Marketplace. That's as a result of Skunk Works implementing DRM into the product. They've obviously done this to combat piracy. They said within the first hour of releasing the F-104, the product was already available on some fairly well-known piracy sites. Of course that's a real shame, and there does seem to be no perfect solution to the situation, but once again we do seem to be combating the piracy problem by making life more difficult for legitimate customers. Anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. Really the main issue for me is the product doesn't effectively offer any discount to previous customers of the TF-104. I think the reasoning for this is, of course, there's no opportunity to enact such discounts on the marketplace, which is, I would imagine, one of Skunk Works' main vending platforms. As a result, Skunk Works have sold the F-104 at a lower price. It is very reasonably priced, I suppose in an effort to soften the blow for customers of the TF-104. That does just grate ever so slightly though, as it does mean that people that purchase the TF-104 are sort of getting a bad deal there really. If they want the F-104 as well, they're paying the same cost as everyone else. And so effectively you can pick up the F-104 quite a bit cheaper than the TF-104. Again, the aircraft are very similar, have the same level of functionality, and in fact with the kneeboard and the autopilot, really the F-104 is the better aircraft of the two. Anyway, just a small gripe there. Overall I really enjoyed the aircraft, and again it's another very solid effort from Skunk Works. Once again guys, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider giving it a like. If you want to see more content from the channel, then please consider subscribing as well. As always, a very big thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. It's very much appreciated. I hope that all of you are having a great day wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.